What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to the WWE NXT Halloween Havoc 2024 Pay-Per-Viewpoint post-show podcast coming to you from smarkoutmoment.com. Smack Talk show, usual setup that we got going on here. I am your host, as always, Tony Mango. I'm flying solo for this edition because it is a pay-per-view. It's an NXT pay-per-view on top of that. So Rob's popping over to check out all the news stuff that's happening like that. Callum, I'm sure, is nicely tucked away asleep right now. I do see that we got Peter in the chat. As everybody else is rolling along, introduce yourselves, let me know who's here and all that. What's going on, Peter? Let me know what you thought about the show too, and of course everybody listening after the fact. If you weren't able to join in live, still leave your comments below on the comment side of YouTube or anywhere else that you're tuning in or checking out or anything like that. You got Facebook, you got X, you got Discord, you got the page on smarkoutmoment.com, all sorts of different ways for you to chime in with your opinions about things. But if you are on YouTube, make sure you also click on all those different buttons we talk about, like the like button helps out quite a bit. Double check you are subscribed, ring that notification bell, get those email alerts set up. If you missed this and you want to make sure that you don't miss the Crown Jewel pay-per-view point post show, then that is of course the best way to do that, because then you get the email that says that we are live. Also, if you want to help us out on the monetary side of things, as I always mention, that is all greatly appreciated, even if it's $1 a month. But if you do the $5 tier and up, you get early access to content. It's an ad block forgiveness tier as well. Darkcast tier is on there. Pick your poison, where you get to request things. You got the little tip jar. You got the super chats. You got the thanks button. All sorts of different things like that. Patreon is the same sort of deal for most of those things. And Redbubble and TeePublic is where you can pick up your merchandise if you want to pick up anything like that, you know, t-shirts and hats and mugs and so on and so forth. But let's just start getting into the NXT show and breaking that down. And this will be another relatively quick episode that I've been doing quite a bit lately. And that's because this was just a good show. And it was good in a way that, like, the action itself was good. Nothing that I think, though, if you missed it, that it's like must see kind of material. I liked every match, but every match also kind of felt sort of pointless to me in some ways. One, actually, you know, we had a title change, so that one, of course, by default is not pointless, but a lot of it felt like not only did they not progress storylines super well for some of these people, they did for some others, but it also felt, again, something that I was talking about with the predictions, that they sort of defeated their own purpose for some of the gimmick matches. And I don't know, if you're going to book a stipulation for me, you need to go with a stipulation. You need to actually do something along the lines of what you're setting up, rather than to just fall short of it and then just say, well, technically was a match. Like, I don't want to watch a Royal Rumble, for instance, where I know it would be interesting because we've seen it with Brock for the first 15 people, but I wouldn't want to watch a Royal Rumble where somebody just tosses one person, toss, and you never get a big group of people in the ring. I don't want to watch an Elimination Chamber match where everybody is in and it's just all 6 and then they get eliminated, because then that kind of defeats the purpose of, like, the Gauntlet aspect of that. And we had some matches here that I feel they set up something and then they said, but we don't actually want to do that. And they had nothing that got in the way of them just booking something else. So I'm really confused about why they went in this direction. Some of the things I don't think make a whole lot of sense going forward for the people that were involved and for the roster in general. So I'm questioning who made the calls for this one and why. But it's not like it's things that are, you know, devastating to the roster or any like huge problems. It's just things where I'm like, it doesn't sit well with me. But the matches themselves were fine quality matches, and I think that this is one of those events that people are going to look back on and they're not going to really remember all that much, because there wasn't really a whole lot of stuff that was memorable. But I don't think we're going to see a lot of people like bitching and complaining about it either. So it's very middle of the road. So we're going to break that down in, you know, more detail. Peter says in the chat, I feel the business got too exposed tonight. Which aspects of it, for like how like the gimmicks worked, or for the other stuff? Because I probably agree with you with that. Well, we got to start off with one of those examples. It was the tables, ladders, and scares match for the NXT North American Championship, with Femi, the previous champion, heading in trying to win the title back from Tony D'Angelo. So the setup for this, again, for anybody who's not watching NXT and maybe missed out or something, Femi took his first pinfall loss to Tony D to drop the title, and they just have a rematch. Now, Femi had said the rest of them in the D'Angelo family are not going to be around for this match, and that was before we had a stipulation. So that's why I was thinking, oh, it's going to be a cage, it's going to be a lumberjack match, something along those lines. And it ended up being that he just took them out. Well, they ended up being here anyway. And on top of that, a tables, ladders, and scares match, which I've talked about ad nauseum. I know I'm not going to give you the full version of it. A TLC match is just a ladder match that happens to have more of a focal point on tables and chairs on top of that. It really doesn't make any sense. It's never made any sense. It's just been a different name of a ladder match. But the purpose of it is supposed to be that it's a ladder match. And when you take away the ability to climb and grab something from the ladder and win the match that way, then it's no longer even a ladder match. Then a tables, ladders, and scares match is a no disqualification match. And that is it. There is absolutely nothing different from what this match was compared to a Belfast brawl, a Donnybrook, a street fight, no DQ, no holds barred, whatever you want to call it, Extreme Rules. It is just a match that you can use weapons that you're, for some reason, just metaphysically just going to only focus on tables, ladders, and chairs. And they didn't really do a whole lot with that either. So on top of that, the D'Angelo family all comes out. Adriana Rizzo uses a crowbar, and it's like, okay, well, tables, ladders, and scares, is that the scares part of it or something? And the whole like setup of this being the D'Angelo family's not going to be there, it's negated, and then they help Tony D win. So their goal here is what I'm really confused about. Tony D already beat Femi, so it's not like, well, we need to have him beat him again. There's no need for him to beat him again. But if there is a need for somebody to win again, it's usually because the win doesn't mean enough and they need to get a more definitive win. This is an even less definitive win because they had an out where like Tony D could have fought this match on his own and won. And then it could have been like, okay, he didn't even need the family. He was a worthy North American champion regardless. But instead he proves that he needs the rest of them on there. So Tony D looks worse coming out of this than he did going into it. The tables, ladders, and scares element of it, that's just stupid, so WWE looks dumb on that front. And then on top of that, if the need for this was Femi needs to lose again, why did he need to get pinned for this? Why couldn't he have just lost the match by Tony D climbing and grabbing the ladder and doing the whole ladder gimmick of this whole thing? He still would have retained the title, and that would have kept Femi looking strong. So they clearly didn't want Femi to look weak by having 4 or 5 people team up on him, but they wanted him to take another pin. And they wanted Tony D to retain the title, but they needed to keep him looking weak. I do not understand the philosophy behind this here. And I know that some people can try to argue that, well, you know, I mean, he still beat Femi, so it's still like that. To me, it doesn't work that way. So I'd love to hear more of an explanation of this and why they did something that seems self-defeating. So I'm not the biggest fan of it. I think that Tony D as North American champion is totally fine. Femi, if he would have just won the title back, it would have been like, well, why did he lose it in the first place? So that's another whole thing. It was like they booked themselves into a corner and then they just said, I don't know, just do whatever. And then they just, you know, I don't like how that all played out. So I wouldn't have had this match set up if I were booking things. I wouldn't have done a rematch at all. And even if I would have, I wouldn't have had a tables, ladders, and scares match. And I wouldn't have taken the ladder match stipulation out of it. And I wouldn't have had Femi have all of them gang up on him. And every element of this along the way, I wouldn't have had happen. So, you know, maybe they have a different plan in mind. Maybe I'm going to look stupid in a month or something. I don't think so. I think I'm going to look back on this and go, yeah, that was actually still pretty dumb. And I don't understand it in November, in December, so on. Another kind of confusing thing, but this is actually cool and interesting, that happened afterward. Sarah Schreiber was talking to Lexis King, and he's still looking for a corner man to be in his corner for the NXT Heritage Cup match that's happening on Tuesday. So out of all the people to pop up, William Regal does, and they are adamantly referring to him as Mr. Regal, not William Regal. He's popped up Mr. Regal on the lower third. They referred to him only as Mr. Regal. So William Regal is going to be in the corner of his son's opponent and helping Brian Pillman's kid potentially beat his own. Or it's a setup where William Regal is going to be like, you fucking idiot. Of course I wasn't going to help you. I have my kid across the ring from you, and I want him to be the champion. So yeah, of course I was going to screw you over. He did say there will be a time to thank him. Is that going to be, you should thank me for giving you a dose of like reality check? Or is it going to be, I'll thank you when you win the title kind of a thing? I don't know, of course, until we get to Tuesday, but I like that they did this. I thought that was pretty cool. So I'm interested in that. I'm also interested in what they had set up a little bit later on the show. I might as well talk about it now. Before the main event, Booker T and Vic Joseph were going over the setup of the ring around the Devil's Playground thing, and Tatum Paxley popped up out of the trunk. She did not appear at TNA Bound for Glory like I was expecting that she would, so that was a little bit odd. But Rosemary turned on Wendy Chu, and then that's the whole thing. So instead, Paxley pops up out of the trunk, and she says that she wants a match, so she spins the wheel, and she gets a casket match. And Ava declares that she will have that casket match against Wendy Chu on Tuesday's NXT. So now we have, it's, kind of a Halloween edition of that. I think it's the 29th. And we got a casket match between the spooky characters. Cool. We've got a Heritage Cup match with William Regal on the opposite side of his own kid. And we've got the tag team title match. So 3 matches that are more than worthy of being something to tune into and check out. So NXT looks kind of fun. So other things to talk about here. Next match was Giulia and Stephanie Vaquer. Or is it Vaquer? Or is it Vaquer? I've heard all 3. Nobody seems to really want to stick to one. And even Vic Joseph himself has been saying multiple different variations. So I'm going to call her Stephanie Vaquer until I am corrected otherwise, because I've heard that more often. It's Vaquer, not Vaquer. Maybe I'm dead wrong about it. I don't know. Maybe they should put people out there to say, I'm Stephanie Vaquer or something like that, like they did with some other people. But Stephanie Vaquer gets the win over Cora, Jade, and Roxanne Perez. And they, of course, don't have a title on the line or anything like this, but more than likely you would assume that she is probably going to get a title shot now that she had pinned the champion. So it gives her a purpose to go forward and have a match like Giulia did, which kind of makes me think that she's going to lose. And then we're going to head up another kind of a setup where it's going to be like a triple threat or a fatal 4-way or something. But they still haven't announced whether Deadline is going to be there, unless I missed something, but I don't think I did. So I'm curious when the next big show is going to be. And we might get that information on Tuesday if that's the case. But I think that we're going to get some kind of a triple threat, fatal 4-way sort of thing happening there. I don't think Vaquer is going to have her title match at the next show, and for that to be in December. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Match itself, though, tag team match, fine. That's it. It's fine. I really have nothing to say about it. And I guess at that point I really had nothing to say about Zarya, but a little bit later on we had something else going on too. So that was the ambulance match. Andre Chase against Ridge Holland. And I had said prior to this, and with prediction side of it, it kind of feels like Ridge Holland winning would be pointless because Ridge Holland already did this. And instead, they should go with Andre Chase. They should have all the other members of Chase University gang up and do all that. Well, they had already done the D'Angelo family gangs up on Oba Femi. So then it started to make me go, okay, well, it's probably not going to happen. And lo and behold, it doesn't happen. Instead, it ends up being that Ridge Holland wins. And I'm again questioning what the purpose of this was. Because this is the story, if you want to really break this down. Ridge Holland loses a bunch. And he gets really angry. And multiple people tell him he needs to get his anger in check. And then he just does. And then they go and move him over to Chase University. and they don't trust him, but then they start trusting him for pretty much no reason. They win the tag titles 19 days, if I remember correctly. Later, they lose the titles, so he turns on them. And then here's even the funnier part if you really boil it down. Ridge Holland takes out Andre Chase, then Duke Hudson, then Riley Osborne, then Riley Osborne again. I guess because they were like, well, crap, that was 2 weeks ago and we got to refresh everybody about that. Andre Chase comes back and he takes him out again. That's it. That's the story, is he just did that and beat everybody up multiple times. So now what? Does Jacy just go, well, shit, that guy kicked our ass, and then they just walk away? I don't know. I don't like it. So the possibility there, I'll talk back and when we get into the main event stuff, but it's still not something I'm a big fan of. The ambulance match itself, I don't remember almost anything that happened, honestly. So it was probably my least favorite segment of the night, even though there were a few moments that made me kind of chuckle. There was the people throwing pumpkins at each other, but they could have been so much better. And that's the thing, is everything that happened on here could have been so much better. And I know that these people are more talented. It's just, it felt off. It felt kind of pointless. I didn't really like that. XOY in the chat, Ridge winning makes sense to me. He likely looks good for a match versus Tony D'Angelo or Trick Williams. We'll talk about that in a moment too. So then we got to go over to the Women's North American Championship match. And this, prior to the event, was a spinner's choice match. We talked about how insane it was that they were like, if you win the tag team match, you'll get a shot, but then it didn't matter if it won or not. They got a shot anyway, and you're going to spin the wheel to determine who they're going to fight, and that's a spinner's choice, so it doesn't matter. And then we're going to figure that out later and all this other kind of gimmicky crap. So on the pre-show, they spun the wheel, and they were standing around the wheel and all, and they decided that since they had any kind of option available, that they were going to do a gauntlet match, which makes a lot of sense in kayfabe. They started out with Jazmyn Nix. And I honestly thought at the moment that they were going to go Fallon or Jacy first, Jazmyn in the middle, and then Fallon or Jacy at the end, because the typical structure of gauntlets in this kind of a scenario would be long match or long segment of a match. And then you get to really quick, oh my God, they actually just beat the second person super fast. And then you get into the third match, and then the third one's another one that's pretty long. And that way it's you kind of a dip down scenario. Well, instead, they ended up having Jazmyn go first, and then Jacy, and then Fallon. So it technically does make more sense to go with the one that's the least experienced and then get harder and harder, because at that point, Jazmyn wears down Kelani a little bit, and then Jacy can try to get the win. And then if not, then Fallon can bring it home. And that's what happens. So Fallon Henley is the new NXT Women's North American Champion, and I'm totally down for that. I've liked Fallon Henley for a long time. I actually thought that she was talented when she was just Tesha Price in AEW. When they signed her, I was like, oh, cool. She seemed like she was one of the better ones. So this is her first singles gold. She won the tag team titles along with Kiana James before, and I guess this de facto makes her the leader of Fatal Influence, which at that point hadn't really been established yet. They might try to act like it doesn't, but it kind of does. At least perception wise, you're going to see one of them has a championship. So she's probably going to be flanked by Jacy and Jazmyn and do that kind of thing. But the celebration post-match immediately cut off by Zarya. So Zarya goes after and takes out all three of Fatal Influence, and the Flatulence members, as I keep calling them, are basically on notice. And, Fallon Henley could lose that Women's North American Championship very quickly to Zarya if they want to. But then again, they did just do the whole thing with Giulia not winning the championship from Roxanne Perez. So it's hard to tell in this current era of NXT what they're more likely to do, but they do seem to be very, very high up on the idea of you shouldn't win the title on the first chance. You should have something that gets in the way, and then you should win it on the second, if not third. It's happened for multiple different people. Even Ethan Page, who quickly won that North American Championship, that NXT Championship, he still didn't win it on the first opportunity. It still ended up being that he won the match with the multi-man setup and, you know, did that whole kind of gimmick. Yeah, it wasn't like his first match at Battleground. Wait, no, am I forgetting that? Do I have the wrong information here? Am I like thinking of the wrong thing? NXT Battleground 2024. Was that when he won the title? And that was his first match? I didn't think so. No, Trick Williams won. Okay, yeah, I'm not being stupid. For a second there, I'm like, but yeah, I think that there is a very strong possibility that Zarya just wins this championship, and Fallon Henley won it because they were like, well, we want to switch it from Kelani to Zarya, and we don't want Zarya to be a heel. It could just be that. They also had some other things from at the night where Ridge Holland had gotten into some issues with Bully Ray and, you know, Bubba Ray Dudley, and that came back into the fold again. Just a little bit of a reminder. Came back around a little bit later on too. We also had the information of you know, setting up some stuff with like Nathan Fraser and Axiom having a little backstage thing, and you know, we got another match that's announced for Jada Parker and Lola Vice are going to be in a hardcore match at the NXT show that's going to be in Philadelphia. So that's booked for the future. And we got around to the main event. So main event was a Devil's Playground match. Trick Williams going in as champion. He's Trick Willy Wonka is what he was dressed as, against Ethan Page. And they had said prior to this that the rules for this match were no DQ, no count out, false count anywhere. So again, it's just a false count anywhere match. Nothing different from that. Every false count anywhere match is no DQ, no count out. So what did they do with the false count anywhere match? Well, if you looked at the tables, ladders, and scares match that barely had any kind of tables, ladders, and chairs, they decided for a false count anywhere match to make everything happen in the ring or very closely adjacent to the ring. And the final pinfall just happens in the ring, which defeats the entire purpose of it being a false count anywhere match. And again, I just question who is booking these things with the idea in mind of, I want this to be this match, but I don't want you to do any of the things in the match. Like, who books a submission match that you can win by pinfall, or a blindfold match where you can take the blindfold off, or a flag match? We've seen this before too. A flag match where instead of grabbing the flag to win the match, you just get the flag after you do a pinfall. And then it's just like, hey, by the way, with the flag. That was one of the stupidest things I had ever seen. And I still, like, I would love to sit that person down and just be like, huh? You know, just see what their response was. So they even screwed it up on here. And Peter just left a comment about this with the rope break in this match, where it's a no DQ, no count out, false count anywhere match. And the referee breaks a pinfall because it's a rope break. It's like, I don't get it. I don't know what they were doing and why they, like, did everybody just kind of like have a brain fart moment or something? But it was a fun enough match. Not my favorite match of the series between these guys. It did its job well enough. And, you know, for like a C kind of a pay-per-view or whatever it is, then, you know, it passes. But Trick Williams retains. He pins Ethan Page. And then immediately afterward gets attacked by Ridge Holland, who is, I guess, just gunning for the NXT Championship. And then Bubba Ray comes out and helps Trick Williams fight them off. So I would want, coming out of this, to see Bubba Ray Dudley against Ridge Holland. Not Ridge Holland against Trick Williams. But I guess we're probably getting Ridge is the next challenger for the NXT Championship. And that is going to roll into the next few episodes of things. Maybe it's going to happen as quickly as the NXT show in Philadelphia. Maybe it's not. I don't know about that, but I would assume, based off of the weird way that the ambulance match was booked and how that all just meant nothing, that Chase U was probably going to screw Ridge Holland over and interfere in that match. And Ridge will end up losing his shot at the NXT Championship. Trick continues to hold that belt, and they just kind of move on to another person after that, whether that's Wes Lee, whether that's I don't know, whoever it might be. by then, maybe we have a new NXT Heritage Cup champion. Maybe we have a new NXT Tag Team champions. Maybe we have a whole new set of champions because maybe Roxanne's defended her title or something. Zarya could have won that championship from Fallon Henley too. It all depends. They didn't announce those shows, as I mentioned, so we got to at least tune into NXT this week and then the week afterward for the 2 shows that they did have announced. And those matches that we have all set up, of course, we're going to break that down when that happens on Tuesday night and next Tuesday night after that. And that's the show. That's NXT Halloween Havoc. Nothing else happened on this. Nothing really other to report or prediction-wise. So, I don't know. I'm going to wrap this up right now in the meantime, though. But if you have anything you want to chat about in the live chat, do that while I'm tossing out some plugs. Peter just tossed thumbs in there. Let me read that real quick. I'm thinking Bully versus Ridge or Bully and Trick versus Ethan and Ridge and ECW. That could be a good way for them to do that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Tag team match to main event that episode of the ECW arena. That way you don't have to put everything on Bully to be involved. You could do, Trick takes the pinfall loss and makes Ridge Holland look really strong, or Bully Ray takes the pinfall loss, and that makes it seem like, Trick technically lost the match, but he didn't get pinned. Yeah, I think they're actually probably going to go in that direction. That makes a lot of sense, Peter. Let me round this out with my plugs in the meantime, too. As I mentioned before, all the different things on the Marketplace, Patreon, YouTube, channel membership, Redbubble, TeePublic, all that good stuff. Anything that you guys do is greatly, greatly appreciated. Discord, chat it up there. Check out the Fantasy League at WWEFantasyLeague.com. I don't really remember what the current setup is there, but I'm more than likely still dead last, and I guess that's probably going to be the entire time here. But I don't know, maybe things change, but we'll talk about that a little bit into next week too, because we're going to get into our Crown Jewel predictions, and we're going to have to factor that all in there. So Callum will give us a breakdown. But also follow all the things that you could see at amangotree.com or anthonymango.com. The Linktree sections for Fanboys Anonymous and Smark Moment and my own personal stuff all have tons of links to them. So click on those, hit the like button or the subscribe button or the follow button or whatever it might be on any of those platforms, and show your support and, help grow A Mango Tree to better and better ways and keep me completely off the deep end. Yeah, that's going to do me in for the NXT Halloween Havoc 2024 pay-per-view post-show. I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you enjoyed the pay-per-view, and we will see you next time around with the Pay-Per-Viewpoint predictions side of WWE Crown Jewel. I'm going to try to shoot for recording that on Tuesday, just because it would be a little bit easier for my schedule than on Wednesday, but we might do it on Wednesday. Sort of depends. Rob and Callum, see who works better for them. But that show is going to be next weekend. We'll have our live coverage. We'll have a round of the hot tags in between then on Friday, most likely. And, we'll talk about anything else along the way when it comes to those things. So stay tuned and make sure that you are following us all over the place. We'll see you next time. But for now, this has been another Smark Out moment, and we are being counted out.